In this episode, I'm going to look at a tape deck that was shipped in, and as you'll see, sometimes we have to do go to extraordinary measures to find replacement parts, because we're in an era now where you can't get parts. There's a lot of parts that are not available. Things like motors and pulleys and belts and gears and stuff that were unique to these devices. You just can't get them anymore. Today I had a Pioneer Elite CT43 cassette deck sent in, and I don't know what's wrong with this one because there's nothing was sent in with it with a description. We'll just see whether it goes through the motions. It says weight on the display here. The lens has come off. That needs to be stuck back on. It's just flashing weight is the only thing that it's doing. Nothing else lights up. None of the lights over here. Interesting. Okay, I guess we'll pull this one apart and take a look in the top and see if we can spot anything obvious that's acting up on this one. Oh, my cat's come to see me. This is my Siamese cat. She was my daughter's cat, but my daughter has moved away and left her behind, so I guess she's now my cat, and she's coming in here to say hello while I work. You gonna say something? You gonna talk to everybody? My new assistant. So this is the Pioneer. Let's take a look at the operation. See if everything is doing what it's supposed to. We'll check the belts out, check motors, and of course check for regulators, because these units have an issue with regulators. And that's what happened to mine. As the regulator went bad, it's gonna probably sit here the whole time. Uh-oh. I spy someone's been into this machine. And someone hasn't seated a cable back in place. Now that can't be all that's wrong with it. Wouldn't that be something? The guy spent like $100 to ship this thing up to me to be repaired. And wouldn't it be just a kick in the nads, even though this isn't an ad, if that's all the problem was a connector that came undone? So first things first, let's just reseat that connector and see whether we get anything else that changes on this. Of course, we have to straighten the pins out, make sure that all the pins are straight, otherwise they're not going to plug in properly. Cat's sitting on my chair now. Okay, turn on the power. Yeah, it still says wait. I don't see any motors turning or anything, but at least now the counter is has appeared. If we look at the front, I have a counter number on here now, so that's certainly an improvement. Let's see if it opens. Nothing still. Oh, wait a minute, it opened. And now it's going to close. There we go. Open, okay. Let's try a tape. Fast forward. It's fast forwarding. Rewind. I don't see any tape moving. I think probably the motor is bad, the capstan motor. Let's see here. Yeah, capstan motor's not turning. Wonder if just the motor that's bad or whether there's a problem in the circuit that controls it. Let's check it out. Well, for starters, there's a belt down here that's not in good shape, but the motor is not turning anyway, so as you can see, that's going into play and stop. So we know the control motor works. The real motor operates as it's fast forwarding and rewinding the tapes, or the tape, but the capstan motor is not turning, and therefore the capstans aren't turning, and for sure there's a belt that's bad. So let's see why this capstan motor isn't turning. First thing we'll do is we'll check to see that the motor is getting voltage. That's first and foremost. If the motor's got voltage going to it and it's not turning, the motor's bad. If there's no voltage to the motor, then it's something else that's causing the problem. This is pretty easy to check because a motor like this should have power all the time to it, and it should always be running. And we have 11.8 volts going to the motor, and the motor is not turning. Therefore, the motor on this one is bad. I'm going to have to see what type of motor it is and whether I'm going to be able to source one, as it's getting hard to get motors for a lot of these tape decks now. It used to be a dime a dozen you could get motors easily, but unfortunately most of the places that carried them have closed their doors, and it's just becoming harder and harder to get these small motors because they're really not used much in stuff today. You know, they were used extensively in cassette decks, you know, when cassette decks were the big thing. But today, that's not the case. So we'll have to see if I can investigate and find a motor. This may have to become a two-part video, just because I don't know how long it's going to take. It could take a month or more to try and get a motor if I can find one. I guess the first thing I'll do is I'll pull the deck out. So let's just remove power, and we'll remove these connectors again just to get them out of the way. That's why it was disconnected. There's obviously somebody's been into this and they've probably already determined that the motor was gone, and I don't know the origin of this, whether someone bought it used and it didn't work and they bought it as is and someone else had already had it serviced, or whether they had it to a shop and the shop said, sorry, we can't fix it. That I don't know. I don't know any of the history of this machine other than the fact that it was sent to me and it does not work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the deck itself. So we'll just undo the plugs that plug the head and so forth in, without breaking the connectors, that is. There's a couple plugs here, and I think there's another one down here. So the thing is, the connectors themselves are all color coded, so it's easy to see where the connectors go. So by removing these connectors, I should be able to remove the deck itself completely to work on it and take it right out of the cabinet. Come on. I don't want to damage these wires, so I'm trying to get this connector without putting any stress on the wires. Okay, got the connector out. Next, we'll remove the screws on the bottom, and the deck itself should be able to just turn it and take it out. I may have to take these braces off. I don't think they're attached to it in any way. It's just a couple screws in the bottom that hold the deck in place. Where else is it attached? Looks like the front has to come off as well, as there's a couple more screws into the subframe here from the front. And I just noticed that this piece is broken here, this piece of plastic that was already broken. Somebody's been into this machine in the past. That's probably how this glass came off. The last person that popped it apart knocked the glass off. What else is holding this in place? Oh, a couple screws in here. There's 2 screws behind. They record little knobs, smaller screws. That piece of bracket's got to come off the back, it looks like. Yeah, I'm probably going to cut that tie. And now there's 4 more screws in the front that should allow the transport to be removed. Hopefully. I think that's all it takes. Now the transport itself should lift out. I don't think the door had to come off. Maybe it does. It should lift out. I'm just going to manually open the drawer here, depending on what way this turns. one way this will open it. There we go. I think I've got to take this front piece off here, slide it out with the mechanism open maybe. This front piece needs to come off of here. It's held in place by clips on each side. There we go. Now I can lift the transport out. There we go, transport's out. Now I can work on the transport completely separate of the rest of the unit. So let's get the rest of the unit out of the way. First thing I'm going to do is remove the motor. So I'm just going to disconnect the power wires here. Now they're marked positive or negative, but the gray cable itself is not in any way marked, which is the negative side. So I'm going to put a stripe on here just so that we remember which side was on the negative. I should have checked to make sure that that was correct. I think it was. Do you guys remember what the voltage reading was when I put the probes on? I think I did have the negative on the top, and it was correct. Just in case somebody's been messing with this thing, right? Anyway, let's remove the wires here. Now these motors, usually we can take them out by just giving them a twist. And they'll come out. Leave the belt behind. We can deal with that later. There is the motor. We can try powering this thing up with external power and just see whether it does anything. It's not going to, but I just want to see if there's any dead spots on here. Whether there's a chance that I can actually get this motor to spin again. These are transistor controlled motors, so there'll be a transistor in here to regulate it, and it could even be that's at fault. The motor itself, it's going to be a counterclockwise direction. This metal wrap here, this is actually magnetic shielding on here. If I want to check out the motor itself, I can actually pop the back off this thing to get at the electronics and see whether it's actually the motor itself that's shot or whether it's the electronics that control it. Because it could be a speed control issue. See, this is the speed control right here on this motor. So it could be the electronics that control the motor and not the actual mechanical motor itself, or it could be the motor itself that's at fault. But the only way to tell is to try and pop the thing open and see whether this thing can be made to work again. Got nothing to lose because the motor itself is shot, so worst case scenario, it's not going to work. Best case scenario, I can get the motor to run, depending on what's causing it not to run. This is dangerous work here because one slip with a screwdriver and you're going to stab yourself. Believe me, I've done that before. You can pop these things apart if you just work away at the corner, and then you get into the motor itself. And here we see the circuitry. If I pop off the pulley, I should be able to push the whole guts through, if I'm not mistaken, and it'll pop this whole thing apart. I gotta disconnect this ground lead here first, otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. So we'll just remove that. See, I've fixed these motors in the past, these type of motors that have been bad, and I may get lucky yet again. I hear an electric car in my neighborhood heading out. Bong, bong, bong. Okay, there's the motor itself, and I want to see whether the contacts are burned or whether it's a problem with one of the components in the speed control. I'm going to say it's the motor, it's the speed control. There appears to be a hole blown in the IC. It's an LA5531. It's got a hole in it. Motor is FUBAR with a capital F. So now we're faced with trying to source one of these motors. I have a little motor here. Only one small problem. Clockwise. This one's going to be counterclockwise. Also, there's a 6 volt, and this one's going to run on 12. Close, but no cigar. And to add insult to injury, I have found a couple places where I can get a motor. Well, I can't get a motor. I have to order them in quantity. Like I'd have to order 10 motors. So I'm still looking. So far, it's been about an hour. I've been surfing around. None of the local suppliers, of course, carry them. So now I'm doing a little bit of a search on the internet. And since I found a couple places in China that carry motors of the right speed, this is going to be about 2400 RPM. Because that's typically what most cassette decks run on. But as I say, at this point, I haven't found the exact motor, and I found some that are of dubious quality, and I've got to order like 10 or 100 of them to get them. Sure, they're only $1 a piece, but if I got to order 100 of them to get them for $1 a piece, that's not really worthwhile doing. Well, I've had a bit of good luck today. I found a motor that likely will work. It's the same size. It's counterclockwise. It has the same length of shaft. It's adjustable speed. This is actually a dual speed motor, but that's okay. We only need one speed for it. And there's a good chance that this motor is actually going to be workable on this tape deck, which is good because I've had no luck trying to find a replacement. And also, did I mention, it's brand new. It was pulled out of a working deck that has never been used. Because I'll show it to you later, but the door was snapped off of it, and the person that owned it only used it as a CD player. It was it came out of a ghetto blaster. Looking to see where these came from. Can try and get them in the same holes that the other ones came out. So if it works, we're in business. Therefore, the motor will go back in the same orientation as the original one. Okay, good. That's good so far. I still have to see if I can find some belts, or maybe is this belt shot? Yeah, these belts are pretty sad. They haven't just come off. I thought maybe one of them just came off the pulley. One just seems to be okay, but yeah, I think these belts, we'll have to try and find some new belts to put on this thing, as well as the motor. But the motor was the big one. Finding a motor that will fit on this thing, and hopefully do the job. One more screw back here. Now I can access the belts that are worn out. Two of them. Okay, I found a belt for the two caps and flywheels. Got another one here that should be okay for the main flywheel to the motor. I'll mount the bracket. I'm going to put the belt around, first of all, around the pulley here so we can pull this up later. So I'll just throw the belt around here for now. Gonna sit in there kind of like that, just so I can get the plate back on. Put the back plate back in place. I'll mount that first. The question is whether this motor is going to run the right speed. That I don't know, but it should be adjustable. Okay, belt is on. As you can see, both of the reels turn. I'm going to reattach this into the unit itself, just so I can double check the polarity on here. The positive and negative are correct. I'm going to reconnect the power before I connect up the head and everything, just so that I can see if this thing will actually operate. Okay, now if I put power to this, I should have 12 volts on these terminals here. We're going to make sure that the polarity is correct. I do indeed have 12 volts. If I connect these two here, for my positive and negative, the motor should run. Sounds like it's going way too fast. So these 4-wire motors they have variable speed control. They're set with external controls. So I'm taking a pot, and we're going to wire it across the two terminals. I just extended the wires here just to make it easier to connect to, because once this is set up, it can just be taped up out of the way, so that it's not going to cause any problems. So I'm just going to tin the legs on the pot, and we'll attach it to the two wires here. And I say once I've got everything set, it'll just be taped out of the way. This is actually the pot out of the broken motor. I pulled it out of the circuit board. We'll use that in this motor as a speed control. One wire there, and one wire to the other one of the other legs on this pot. And this should give me a motor speed control. Get a little small adjuster. Turn this thing on, and there's the motor that's turning. It might even be turning the right speed. We'll just we'll try it. We'll put a tape in it and see how it sounds. Okay, as you can hear, our speed is too slow. Let's increase the speed. So that's got us at the maximum speed. And I'm at the highest resistance on this. I'm going to have to increase the resistance. If I open the wires up completely, it's going to go at full speed. So we know that making the resistance lower slows the speed down. So I have to find a higher rated variable resistor, or add a resistor in series with this to give my range a little higher speed. Anyway, it's 1K is what we're at. Right now we need a higher resistor value than that. I don't know that I've got any trimmers. I'd put one in, but I don't believe I have any. So we'll add another resistor to this thing. We know that 1K is not enough. It's going to have to be a lot more than that. So in a 5K resistor in series, probably a 2K, that'll let me go between 1 and 3, and that might get my speed where I need it. Okay, I put a 4.7K resistor in series. It's just temporary. I will put heat shrink on this if it works. I just want to see if I can get the speed somewhere in the ballpark here. So let's just try it. This is 440 hertz. I would say we're right in the ballpark. Whoops. The thing is, my skin resistance is ever so slightly changing it, so I have to adjust it and let go of it. There we go. 440, that's pretty darn close. I'm going to kind of encapsulate that control. I'll put a piece of heat shrink tubing over top of the resistor, and we'll set this thing up, because I think this is going to be okay. With this motor, I think we can save this tape deck. I'm touching it now still. We'll get that, we'll get it all set once I get everything encapsulated. So I know I'm going to get my fair share of people that are not going to appreciate how I've fixed this. You know, putting a motor in from a different machine, for example. You have to understand that in today's world, as far as these old tape decks go, it is very difficult to try and get any type of parts, especially any part of any good quality. This is a good quality Japanese motor that I took out of a tape deck. One of my tape decks, a tape deck that I won't be able to sell. You know, I gutted one of my tape decks to service this unit. It actually came out of a Hitachi. It was one that you guys haven't seen, although we might see it. It's a portable unit. It was a ghetto blaster. And it's mine. The tape compartment is broken on it. Like the tape holder, it's missing. So if I ever do a service video on it, it'll just be to get the CD player and the radio portion functional. I won't worry so much about the tape deck, because the tape deck itself, the lid, right, the lid that the tape sits in is missing, and it was missing when I got the unit. It was given to me by the person that gave it to me has been deceased for a number of years, but it was given to me by a friend's mother. It was her unit that she used, and the CD player on it was broken, and the cassette lid was missing. It got dropped. So she gave it to me and wondered if I could get the CD player running. And before I had a chance to look at it, she had a heart attack and passed away. It was a friend of the family, and unfortunately, both of her kids, which are both younger than me, they're also passed away. Both had cancer in their, like, one was 30, I think one was 39, and the girl was 39, and her brother was like 48 or something when he passed away. So they're all gone. So it's like I ended up with this old Hitachi ghetto blaster that's been sitting, you know, for the past 20 years, just waiting for me to do something with it. And eventually I will do something with it, as far as getting the radio and getting the CD player, if I can get the CD player to work. Apparently that was the problem. The tape deck has never been used. She never ever used a cassette deck, but the lid, like the cassette door, got broken on it, and that's why she never used it, because it didn't work. So this motor here, for all intents and purposes, is brand new. It's never been used. So some of you might think this is you're going to call it a hack job. I can see it now. You're going to say it's a hack job. It's not a hack job. Okay, this is an OEM Japanese motor. It uses an external control that, in the case of this Hitachi tape deck, is actually on the circuit board itself, instead of it being an adjustment in the back. These motors that are designed for dual speed decks, even when they weren't used in dual speed decks, they still have the external resistor across them, external control. So that's all I've done, is I've just given it an external control. This will be tied up out of the way, so it's not going to touch anything, and it'll just be left you know, I'll tie it down or tape it down to something where it's not going to touch anything, and we're good to go on this, right? So it's not a hack job. It's a successful repair in an era when we don't find repair parts. And as I say, I looked around, I could find these things, but I had to buy a quantity of them to get them, and they're out of China. So who knows what the quality is. At least the one that's in here is a Japanese motor. We know that this one is going to last for a long time. So I've got it going now. It's clocking in at 440.3. So I think we're okay as far as the speed goes here. We're very, very close to being bang on. Close enough. 440.2. So yeah, we're good. Neat, huh? Oops, they might be the wrong screws. I think those are the short ones. The long ones go in the front and the bottom. Let's check it out and see how it plays. Sounds like Dolby C maybe. Where's my Dolby button here? Got Dolby S on it too. Oh, let's record it up. Let's skip ahead. I think there's only one track on here. We'll make a recording once this is over. We'll try this thing out and see how it records. Let me set this up for a recording, and we'll do a recording off of my MP3 player. I think this is from the YouTube music library, so I've already set my levels up. Let's hit play, and we'll see how it sounds. A little bit of a cloud on my levels here. +2, I guess, is what this meter does here. Mode. But let's just see how this sounds just going off of tape with no Dolby, because I want to put Dolby S on and just see how this thing sounds with Dolby S. I love some of the way that they talk about it. It says digital tension control. Yeah, it's just the slippage of a belt. So there's the sound with no Dolby. That sounds damn impressive just through my speakers. We're going to do it again. This time I'm going to put it into Dolby S just because it's there. We'll record the same track again Dolby S. And this time when I play it back, we're going to take the output directly from the tape and we're going to pump it right into the camera. So you're going to hear in Dolby S exactly how this thing sounds. So I've started it. I haven't started it recording. I didn't hit record. Okay, let's cue up the music again. Oops. We'll try that one more time here. Okay. Okay, we're going to plug in the camera. We're going to listen to the recording back from the tape. Anyway, that's the unit. It's working. And it's actually sounding very good, as you guys could hear. I'll show you the machine I got the motor out of, just so you know what it came out of. The motor came out of this CX950 Hitachi Ghetto Blaster. As I say, I've had this thing for at least 20 years. It was given to me at least 20 years ago because the CD player wasn't working. And the lady that owned this, she used it in her, she lived in one of these big mobile homes. And anyway, shortly after she gave me this, she never used the tape deck. Apparently it got dropped and the lid broke off of it when it was new. She'd never used the tape deck. She only used to listen to the radio and play CDs on it. So when the CD player stopped working, she'd give it to me to look at. And before I had a chance to look at it, I heard that she had had a heart attack and ended up at that point in a care facility, and that was the end of her. So I never ended up fixing this thing. It just became part of my collection. Anyway, as I say, that motor that I pulled out of here, I guarantee that motor was brand new, because I don't think the tape deck was ever used on this thing. It got dropped. See, this was broken too. That's why it was held up by a piece of cardboard. It got dropped when the thing was new, and it was never the same. It just sat on the table and was used as a CD player and a radio. So that's where the motor came from. I secured the speed control here with a zap tie around it to hold it in place so it's not going to short out against anything. And of course I've got heat shrink tubing on both the conductors, so it's not going to short out against anything. I just made a note here, speed adjust, pointing at it so that anybody that looks at this thing down the road will know that's the speed adjust for the motor. Anyway, this one's about as good as I'm going to be able to make this thing. And as I say, some of you might not appreciate me putting a new old stock motor in this thing, but I think that if you look at the big picture, the motor that I put in here is going to be far more reliable than anything that you can buy out of China today. I figured it's worth mentioning, to get the top cover back on, you got to take these stupid ears off on the side. Otherwise, it's not going to fit. It's got rubber pieces on like little rubber gaskets that fit below, and they stop the cover from sliding on. So you got to take those ears off. I'm going to cement this back on, or tape it on, or whatever. We're going to get that back on too. I'll show you that once I got it done. So what I've done is I've just replaced the double-sided tape on the display itself, on the back of the glass. And we're going to stick this back over top of where the glass came out of, to make it stick in place. You can see a bit of it around here, but I'm sure if I can probably get that out of there. Yeah. Okay, so now the display is is back in place there. It's good as new. Well, as good as it's going to be, which is pretty much good as new. Thanks for watching. We will catch you in the next one real soon. Bye.